I love my current partner so much and can't imagine a future without him, but he really wants kids, and I've always known I want to be child-free, so I think I need to break it off so he can have the life he's always dreamed of. Posted by you/throwaway Kotson. I don't know why I'm writing this. I think deep in my heart I know the right choice, and that is to end it all. But it's simply so painful to even imagine that I find it so hard to pull the trigger, and I'm afraid of regret. I think I have been convincing myself for a while now that maybe I'm a fence-sitter, but it's becoming more and more clear I was trying to avoid having to leave my partner. I, 25F, have never particularly felt a desire to have kids. As a person, I've always been quite childish and young for my age. I like to be looked after and have been late in reaching milestones like moving out, only just finished med school and started working at 25, obviously not my fault, but delayed life milestones regardless. My current partner of a year and a half, 27M, knows he wants kids and has always felt that way. He thought 2 was a good minimum. I had been adamantly child-free for at least a year before the relationship. We thought this would be the end, but we chose to continue and see if my views changed when I started working. I read lots of opinions and articles, thought for many, many hours, read the baby decision, and thought, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, and that maybe one and done could be the way. We kept an open dialogue the whole time. I made up conditions under which I could have kids, such as my mental health being stable, being happy in my job, currently have lots of career uncertainty, having a guarantee of a date night every week, having family willing to take them for a weekend every month for a full break, having enough money to hire a nanny, having a partner who was willing to take on at least half, if not more, of the work, teaching them to entertain themselves, etc. It went on, and many could never be fully guaranteed. For example, what if they had special needs? What if they were highly extroverted and felt neglected by me not wanting to engage with them all the time? But ultimately, now I realize I was just negotiating with myself, so I didn't feel the cognitive dissonance of being in a relationship while knowing it was going to end. Maybe one day I'd change my mind, but probably not in time for it to be worth it for my current partner. I don't regret choosing to continue the relationship at all. He's taught me so much, and we would have missed out on so many good times and lessons if we'd cut it short. But we will have to at some point, because I want him to have the future he deserves, which is a family. And he deserves to have it with someone who wants it just as much as he does, not someone who has to painstakingly convince themselves they could deal with kids under certain conditions. Someone who isn't really interested in the daily grind of parenting doesn't really want to be a parent. It's tragic because I'm so incredibly happy in this relationship. He's so accepting and non-judgmental, thoughtful, empathetic, and caring. We share the same sense of humor and always have such a great time together. We balance each other out, with him being more grounded and good at encouraging me to act, while I help him open up emotionally and have lots of thoughtful insights to share. We have very similar values, which we hold very closely, and believe in authenticity and empathy. Without this issue, I'd happily see a future with him in the long term. He would definitely be an all-in parent. He is willing to be the stay-at-home parent, or happy if I wanted to, or for both of us to work. He's just flexible for whatever. He loves cooking for me and caring for me, and I know he'd be an amazing father who made his children feel loved and would do anything for them. He supports me and encourages me to do things to better my life. He's involved in teaching Kids Weekly as a passion project and supervises an international kids camp every year or so. Honestly, as someone who had poor emotional parenting myself and has grown from how he validates my feelings and helped me come out of my shell, I sometimes wonder if part of why I was so drawn to him romantically is because of this caring nature. As if it's the same qualities I love in him that would make him a great parent. I'm so afraid I'll never find someone as good as him again. It's a weird feeling, but I almost feel afraid that anyone who is as selflessly caring as him would want kids. Not saying child-free people are heartless, especially as I probably am one, but I do wonder if we are more selfish. He just naturally cares for people, including me, and doesn't see it as a sacrifice when he goes out of his way to help me or give up his time. But in a weird way, I want a partner who I can care for and who can care for me, but I don't want to care for a kid who won't care for me back, at least for a while, and with no guarantee. The only other reasons I'd want a kid are having another person there when I'm older or if my partner dies early. And in a way, also to be able to give them a better childhood than I got, but that's not a huge motivator for me, it's more just nice and poetic to imagine. Anyway, some of the reasons I know parenting would be a struggle for me include, I am very empathetic and have deep personal values, but I am selfish when it comes to physical tasks like household chores and cooking. For example, I can't lie even in games like Among Us where you're pretending, because of how wrong it feels. I tell my partner how much I adore him all the time and am always sensitive to other people's feelings. I would happily listen to someone's worries if they needed someone to talk to. But I wouldn't stay late at work to help someone else with tasks, or want to help people move house, etc. I often cook in bulk to avoid having to think about it for a few days because of the burden. Those kinds of menial physical tasks are more what childrearing involves, rather than deep, meaningful conversation or emotional support. So I would suffer a lot having to do such tasks every day, driving them around, getting them out of bed, making food for them. I feel I'd have to feed them proper food, rather than the same leftovers for days and days in a row, haha. I get easily stressed as well, such as at work during times I have to work long hours and have many demands on me. Often not even life or death stuff, just patients wanting to complain about something or needing insurance paperwork gives me stress. I like things being organized and as convenient as possible. I don't deal well with anything that doesn't go to plan. Children are probably the most unpredictable things ever, and if I'm not flexible, there's no way I can deal with their constantly changing needs and moods. When I'm overwhelmed and busy at work, I can't sleep well and can't relax even in my spare time. If my life with kids were a constant list of tasks to keep in my head, I suspect that same chronic stress would make my life miserable, even if I did get breaks. I don't do well without 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and obviously, this is difficult with kids. I'm a person who's been through a lot of personal trauma, including a childhood marred with neglect, and have very strong emotions which can be very negative. I'm someone who likes to be looked after, understood, empathized with, who likes adults who can respect my emotions and be grateful. I would struggle with being triggered by kids who have no care for my mental state, not because they're bad people, but because they're dealing with learning about a confusing world, but same effect nonetheless. I'm very sensitive physically, to pain and pleasure. All of the physical pains of pregnancy and childbirth would be unbearable to me. I once had an accidental pregnancy which I terminated later, but the nausea was intense and it was the worst few months of my life. I know I could regret not having kids, but as my mental state and personality are now, I'd lose a lot more by having kids. I'd go through many years of pain for uncertain return. And while biology has a way of making you not regret it and making you love them, that's a moot point when you don't have to have them in the first place. So I think I will have to end things. Sooner or later, for the good of both our futures. Update 5 months 2 weeks later. Hey y'all. I originally wrote this post here. The breakup was intensely hard, of course it was. Despite only being together for approximately a year and a half, that's definitely enough time for it to be devastating and for the other person to be deeply entrenched in your life. The last weekend together, we cried for hours in the car while exchanging cards and gifts. Cried for weeks and felt empty for months. I still miss being in a relationship at times. Things are quite a lot better now, and I feel like I've already moved on mentally. I don't think about him every day now, and it doesn't bother me if I do. We ended the relationship with the desire to stay in touch later on, not exactly close friends, but friendly, wanting to see each other do well in life. I think I'll be happy with that, and happy that he can live the life he wanted and that will make him happy. I'm tempted to message him in a few months once I'm further into my healing. We've been no contact so far, which has been absolutely the right decision. But at the same time, with all that, I feel with so much clarity that I made the right choice. I can clearly see all the awful paths that could have happened if we'd continued, and even if I try to imagine the happiest possible outcome with him, I can't imagine it. It just doesn't fit me. It's so clear to me now that it feels strange to have questioned it so much, but I suppose love plus a healthy dose of social conditioning will influence anyone. In fact, I moved into a new flat not long after all this happened, and my flatmates, who are like 3 to 7 years older than me, had the same views on kids, as well as many other things in society. It gives me a kind of comfort in being understood. There are definitely people happily living the way they want to live, and that's perfectly fine. I didn't have many older role models before. I'm sure they'd laugh at the idea of being role models though. Frozen pizza for dinner is a common sight, haha. I definitely wouldn't want to date seriously for a while, but I've had a few cute moments and compliments, and that gives me enough hope for the future. My friends have been wonderful through it all, and honestly, that's worth more than anything. I'm ever glad I never neglected them despite being in a relationship, not that I'd ever intend to, but I can see how people fall into that trap. I can see so many options for my future without kids, and it makes me feel free, like a weight was lifted. I probably will have moments where I question if it was the right choice, but I think you do that either way, and overall I always get reminded why this choice was the one for me. I was on a plane the other day in front of some kids, and the whole ride was just, Mum, why is X, in different variations for an hour, cute at first, but very quickly became annoying. Definitely made me realize I'd mentally break down with that 24/7, or even over a few hours, to be honest. Anyway, a bit long-winded to say, things are getting better, the difficult choice was the right one in this case, and listening to my gut was the way forward. Lots of reflection on who I was as a person and realistically what I liked in life, based on previous experience, was the biggest tell for me. Things like sleep, quiet, free time, disliking mental burden and chores, they seem like small things, but to me, it has been the difference between happy times in my life and depressing ones. Being a junior doctor helped me a lot with figuring this out. For example, when working long hours, despite helping people supposedly being satisfying to others whom I talked to, and making it worth it for them, that never made up for the crappiness of the job or 14-hour days for me, and I felt such a disconnect. So being realistic about what gives you satisfaction is important, even if it is the more selfish-seeming option, though it's definitely not selfish to look after your own mental health and put more into your existing relationships, etc. Second update 2 years 4 months later. Just an update from someone who's chosen the child-free side of the fence. So, nearly 3 years after breaking up with my previous partner, who I loved greatly, because he wanted kids and it didn't feel right, I've continued to enjoy my life with friends and family. That's much the same. Work has been incredibly stressful, but I've gone part-time, which has helped greatly, and I'm spending time on hobbies and relaxing. I know that if I had kids, part-time wouldn't be a break, but just more time spent on kids, as most of my part-time colleagues do. I've realized a lot about my own struggles and that I have a great deal of my own stuff to work through, so I've started therapy, which has been really therapeutic. Through that process, though, it has only strengthened my view that my instincts were right, having kids isn't what I want from my life. I have so much to heal and so much care to give to myself. Working in mental health, especially in child mental health, has shown me many people who end up creating problems for their kids by having them for the wrong reasons. I've had a few patients whose parents had kids to try to save their relationship, which has either created major problems for the child, from witnessing their parents' conflict, which is hard to hide, or the relationship ended anyway, or both. Honestly, if you have kids, you have a responsibility to work through your own stuff, because it's going to pass down if you don't, and so many people don't even give that a passing thought. As well, I'm in a wonderful new relationship, much faster than I thought. I met someone, after a healthy grieving period, and we've been together nearly 2 years. He's honestly wonderful in all the ways my previous partner was, but on top of that, he has positive traits my previous partner didn't have, traits I had thought about but accepted I'd never find. I'm a fairly thoughtful person who likes to analyze things deeply, and my new partner is able to connect with that on a different level. When we had our first date, I actually brought up the kids topic at the end, which I've since learned he was ecstatic about at the time, as it meant I was serious. He took it as a real win, and he said it wouldn't be a problem at all. He was a fence-sitter in the sense that he hadn't thought much about it, assumed he might have kids after the age of 40, delayed as much as possible, and didn't really think not having them was an option. It was scary going in, thinking he wasn't that certain, but it's become clear he's not keen. I had worried about how lots of men want kids. Would I ever find a partner? I think it's becoming more and more common nowadays. Maybe I just got really lucky, which I absolutely did, but I don't think it would have been doom and gloom even without him and with just my friends and family. Definitely less doom and gloom than having kids I didn't really want. I have no doubt this is the right decision for me. Reading my original post is wild because I obviously really didn't want kids for many, many reasons, but it was so hard to leave. That validation, that it was the right choice, definitely helped me stick firm to it and feel I still had a future. As a person, I tend to know what I like and dislike pretty instinctively, but things tend to go wrong when I make decisions based on logic rather than that feeling. For example, this part-time job pays better and has better hours but is quite stressful, so I should do this, rather than the one I have a vague sense I'll like more. My gut was right, and peace is priceless. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. You were brave. Do you happen to know what has happened to your ex in the meantime? Ops response. We've caught up briefly. He's doing okay, found someone else who seems nice enough, who I presume wants kids, so I think overall it's just a better situation for us. He's still important to me in the sense that I wish him well, and I'll be happy for him if I see him with his kids one day. I think I'd feel equally glad that it's not me having to have those kids. Commenter 2. Thank you for this update. I could have written your original post almost word for word, it's kind of eerie. Anyway, this helps bring me some clarity. I'm currently in the phase of intense cognitive dissonance, but realistically I know I'll probably be fine later on. It just makes me sad, of course. I had the exact same fear, that maybe anyone who's this good and loving will naturally want kids, but I'm glad to hear that's not necessarily the case. I've been thinking that whether you want to have kids is something almost fundamentally ingrained in us, and I think it's heavily correlated with our attachment styles, which are largely formed by the time we are 2. I feel like it's something we can't just simply rewire as adults, at least not easily or quickly. Ops response. I agree with the attachment style comment. I did have emotionally neglectful parenting, and while I am empathetic toward other people, I don't have that desire to nurture a baby or child. It may be because I never received that, but honestly, I think I'd be happier receiving that care from my partner for my whole life. My partner has an incredibly healthy attachment with his parents, which I think is why he was somewhat more ambivalent about having a child. He naturally understands that parenting is all about giving love, which many people wanting kids don't seem to get. If he were a parent, I think he'd be a great one. The reason he isn't so keen is more to do with practical things, such as the sacrifice to his career, either staying at home or having to take more financial responsibility as the primary earner, which is scary to him, monetary cost, day-to-day logistics, lifestyle, and travel. But in our relationship, he takes care of a lot of the housework. So a child-free man is not necessarily just someone who knows they'd be too lazy to have a child. After working in mental health, I realized that being a caring person has nothing to do with wanting kids. As shown by my story, it's more dependent on the specific reasons for wanting or not wanting kids. A narcissistic person could want kids for the wrong reasons, and a very nurturing person could not want them because they are aware they have different priorities.